America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Friday about this time, and today I'm going to talk to you about why political coherence matters. It's not obvious that my ideas have to cohere with one another. I should be able to just like what I like when I happen to like it, and dislike what I like when I happen to dislike it, right? That seems to be the case. But instead, what we do has to cohere with other things we do in a way that makes us make sense as a whole. And if you don't understand this, there are a few things. You'll get confused by why, for example, Catholics who would otherwise be pro-choice, if not for the understanding that their religion says that life begins, at conception, or some iteration of their religion suggests that life begins at conceptions. So you don't understand why they hold on. You can come or go, but I have to finish this up. So they don't understand why, even though they don't believe in that view, they'll vote with regard to abortion in one way because they're Catholic in every other aspect of their life. Right? Do you want to say hi to the people?
Hi, people.
Hi, people. All right. So, the idea is that who you are has to cohere with everything else you do. For example, I am her father. That affects, I am your dad, right? Every day. And also when I'm not with her, I am still her dad. So how I comport myself in other aspects of life is going to be consistent with how I parent her. Right? So it's not going to be a disjunct because I am kind of a unified person. I'm pretty much the same. If you meet me on the street, I'm pretty much, or on the YouTube, if you just kind of see me, I'm pretty much the same person I am here talking to you that I am when I talk to my kids alone. And you would say, that's horrifying. But it turns out my kids are dope. So me being the same kind of person with them that I am with you, who I am at class and at work and everything else, is actually allows me to be me. I am a unified person, right? Because my family life coheres with my political life, which coheres with my social life and my job, and everything kind of makes sense, right? And I think that's important in order to be a concrete individual. If that doesn't make sense, if you don't have a coherent life, if you're not part of mutually reinforcing institutions, if you have three different faces, or ways of viewing, basic issues, depending on your setting, then who are you really? And are you a unified person? And that's going to be like when people go to your funeral, people are going to say different things about you that might not cohere with each other based on the sphere of activity which that person met you. But, for example, at my funeral, I suspect everyone's going to have a story that coheres with everyone else's story because I'm kind of a concrete, individual. I am who I am. And that kind of is a robust enough character that actually can take all sorts of institutional participation. Like I'm not different than I am at church and I am here and I am in class, than I am with my kid, and that I am on the soccer field. It's all the same person in a way that actually allows me to be an individual. Because if that coherence wasn't there, I would not be a unified person, right? Who would I be? So people want to make sense to themselves. They have to make sense to themselves. That means their whole self has to be expressed in every particularization of themselves, even if the particularizations of themselves are kind of structured differently. Just like my particularization of myself as a family man is structured differently than my particularization of myself as a runner or a soccer player, which is different than my particularization of myself as a philosopher, as different than my particularization of myself as a musician. But all of them cohere with each other, which is why none of them will be surprising in whatever particular affect that I kind of express in any of those institutional settings. Because I am one person and I take pains to make sure that my behavior coheres in all of these different institutional, with my politics and with all of these other institutional forms, because that's the only way I can get to know who I am. Right. So the opposite of that is people who just say that, like, well, don't look for coherence. Just give people what they happen to want. Give them the goodies. Right. And this is kind of how the left gets themselves into trouble. They think that, well, we don't have to talk about ideological coherence and like the kind of robust understandings of freedom. We can just give people goodies and expect them to vote for us because we give them the goodies they happen to want. And of course, they're going to vote for their own interests. But if their interest is coherence, then what appears to be their interest in like a material way is actually, they might not vote based on that, because like they might believe other things that call for like fasting, right? That call for forbearance, that call for abstinence, right? So there are things you give up for the sake of coherence, for ideological cohesion. Because if you're not willing to give up anything for ideological coherence, you will just be swayed by the most powerful kind of material pleasure that is like that is kind of going to hit you, right? If coherence doesn't matter at all, you'll just be easily swayed. And this is a thing about people whose ideas or ways of being can't sustain investigation. They'll just be liable to fall for bad arguments. They'll be liable to fall for all sorts of, they don't know why they hold the position they hold. They actually won't have a why they hold the position they hold. They'll just happen to hold it. And then the next day they can happen to hold a different position, right? And so you don't want to be friends with them. You don't want to be in any sort of meaningful relationship with them. And they aren't even dependable for themselves. They can't hold themselves to diets because, to be on a diet is to have current behavior being governed and cohering with some sort of future aspiration. The same with working out. Same with any sort of long-term plan, right? So if you don't respect coherence in general, you're not going to be able to have a long-term plan for anything, because what a long-term plan is to conform your behavior to cohere with some, idea or aspiration that's into the future, right? So insofar as you care about being able to determine yourself as a something, that means, determination is just being able to be something and not be what you're not. And insofar as you want to be able to make yourself what you are through your activity, you have to respect coherence, because you understand that what you do now is going to be expressive of something in the future that's not now. And if coherence didn't matter, you would just well, I'll do what I do now, and now is the only thing that matters. What happens in the future? Well, I'll just do what I want in the future, and that's the only thing that matters, but that's not now, so I'll just do what I want now, and that's the only thing that matters. In other words, you won't get anything meaningful done that takes work over time. Yep. And you won't actually be a thing, because anything that matters takes work over time. All right? So, hold on. Do you have something to say? No. Okay, well, then you have to have some sort of respect. I love you, too. You have to have some sort of respect if you want. What chapter are you on? 3. You're on chapter 3? Okay, well.
They're short.
Well, keep working.
They're just on the beginning.
All right. I have to finish the show, so if you want to be here, you can read, but you have to be quiet and let me finish. Or you can sing and talk and do whatever, but you can't stay here, okay? Okay. All right. So coherence is important insofar as whatever you want to be and do is going to take multiple different activities that all express the whole of you, different particularizations of the whole of you. And they have to, if there's going to be an individual, a concrete individual, all of those different expressions have to make sense and mutually reinforce each other. Or when someone asks, who are you? Who is I-me? There isn't going to be an actual answer to that question, because every story of I-me will have a different kind of express characteristics. But it won't happen with me, because every story of me is going to have kind of a similar characteristic. It's going to be, I suspect that most people who know me in any other aspect of my life understand. It's kind of rude to yawn in front of the people like that. Okay, so some people cover their mouths when they yawn, and they do all sorts of things. Okay. Okay. All right. So I suspect all other, it's not surprising that I'm kind of the same person everywhere because I am a concrete person. And people who aren't the same person everywhere, what are they? And they don't even know themselves. And so, they're untrustworthy. All right. So I'm going to hit the opening and come back with why this matters for politics in particular.
To the beat, y'all. Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I'll paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front. To the beat, y'all.
So the opposite of coherence is just kind of doing what you want when you want to, not worrying about how it's going to affect the future or how it has how it conforms to what you said you were going to do in the past, right? And we all know people like this. They're the fantastic flakes who I don't think that what they do or what they did has to cohere with what they do, or think that in different social situations, they can have radically different opinions about like basic issues. And that just makes them not dependable, not even to themselves. They can't even depend on themselves because they're like part of what it is to be a self is to have all of your expressions of yourself cohere with yourself. And that means it's of you, right? And not, you can't push the microphone if you're going to be here. Okay. And not just have these disparate kind of, disparate trajectories of what you think is yourself, but there's no like actual intellectual coherence that you even understand of yourself. It's just what you happen to have done on that day. Right. So when people ask, who are you? There's not going to be a real answer. You're not really dependable across time or through aspirations. Right. So in order to understand the politics of that is that voters need to make sense of themselves. And if they want to defend themselves to other people, they're going to want what they do to make sense. That means that it's going to have to cohere with other things that they do. I mean, we can all stand a few hypocrisies, but there's going to be a hard limit to how many hypocrisies you want to like evince to yourself before you're going to have to self-medicate yourself, or you just won't be very mentally healthy because you find yourself like the meaning of what you do is going to be the meaning of what you do in any particular activity is going to get its sustenance and substance from how it coheres to the whole. If nothing coheres to the whole, then there is no whole. That means every individual particular activity you do is like going to be meaningless. By the way, if you like anything I'm doing, you should actually substantiate that effect I'm having on the quality of your life by going to www.funkyacademic.com and kicking in $5, $15, or $50 a month for me to kind of keep doing what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is actually giving you the quality of political insight that you aren't going to get other places, right? And I think that's important, right? Because you're going to be surprised when people seem to vote against their interests, because what this particular policy that's superficially against their interests coheres with like all of their other realizations of their particular selves and other institutions that like make them who they are. So it seems like it's against their interests and they're voting against their interests, but it actually coheres in a very big way with all of the other aspects of who they are as people, right? So when you see otherwise like cool people like have awful politics and you think, well, they're voting against their interests. Like, no, it's just that they're actually aiming at a bigger sense of who they are that coheres with all of these other things. And because it coheres with those other things, they're willing to forego this particular interest. In the same way that people who fast, it's not like they don't like to eat. but that going without coheres with like a bigger vision of themselves. So they're willing to fast in order to attain that bigger vision of themselves, or work out, or, do whatever, right? So you can't judge behavior based on the particularization of that behavior unless you understand that there's a whole agent who's engaging in that behavior. And in that behavior is just one particularization of that agent, but that whole agent's there, and other behavior has to cohere with that whole agent. So you can't explain people by one like particularization of them, because they are not their one particularization. They are the totality of their particularizations. And if they want to be, that means the totality of their particularizations has to like cohere with each other. The job has to match the family, which has to match the understanding of property, which has to match the understanding of religion. All of these have to like go together in order to have like to be a concrete individual who participates in all of these differentiated institutions of freedom. So coherence matters, and people who don't think that coherence matters, they don't have integrity, because they don't think that they should be accountable for what they did or said prior, and they really don't have forethought. You know what? I'm going to tell you right now. When people think I'm joking when I say I speak to my kids the same way I speak to you guys. But, for example, tell me the difference between Prometheus and Epimetheus.
Prometheus gave the humans fire. Epimetheus let all the bad spirits out. Well,
that's with respect to Pandora. But what is special about Prometheus? Does he think on the moment, or does he think ahead?
He always thinks ahead, and Epimetheus always thinks on the spot.
Right. So which person do you want to be? Do you want to be Prometheus, or do you want to be Epimetheus?
Prometheus.
Why?
Because then I'll be able to think ahead and let the world be a better place.
Right, you'll be able to anticipate problems, and people want you to be able to think ahead and anticipate problems, and that means, you need to you need a world that actually makes sense, where people are coherent, right? Because if nothing makes sense, then it doesn't matter. You can just think on the moment. There's no use to planning. Planning doesn't matter, right? By the way, Prometheus just pretty much means forethought. It's Greek. Pro means before, and method it's like just thought or plan. So just, yeah. And epi means on. So yeah, you could, if you want forethought, if you want a nation where planning matters, and you need planning for freedom, right? Because freedom is not, if you want like a short understanding of freedom, it's just the ability to make and realize plans. If you can't make and realize plans, you're not free. If all of your plans that you make are liable to be frustrated by external factors, then you aren't free, right? And that's why for a lot of people, black people, we're not free, because anything can frustrate any plan we make, right? Because we don't own enough capital. We don't like our plans don't matter. And insofar as your plans don't matter, you're not free. And insofar as your plans don't matter, why even have them? So you just do what you want to do, right? So, in a world where freedom matters, in a world where plans matters, that's going to be a world where coherence matters. Because not only you want other people to be coherent, so that you can depend on them to either be and not be what they have previously realized themselves to be. But you need to be coherent insofar as you need to know who you are, so that you have meaning in your actions. So your actions mean something. If your actions aren't coherent, they don't have meaning. Right? It's just what you happen to do. Right? And if you string your life together through things you just happen to do, none of it's going to have meaning, man. So coherence matters, and the mattering of coherence explains why people do things that doesn't seem to be in their interest, but it coheres with their identity and ideology about who they are and why they do what they do. All right. Once again, if you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month to keep me doing what I'm doing. And I will see you next week. You want to say bye to the people?
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So let us Scoot.